Hello everyone. Let's talk for a minute about donations, precarious labor, and my future as an educator and as a YouTuber. Ever since I started uploading videos to this channel back in 2015, more than 3 years ago now, I've held firm about one thing. I've never been in this for the money. And I want to be clear in saying that is not changing. My videos will always be ad-free, and they will always be available at the same time to everyone. Equally, my personal financial situation has worsened considerably in recent months, for reasons that I'll discuss in a minute, and at the same time, a growing number of you have expressed a desire to donate money to me. So it was this particular confluence of circumstances which has led me, after plenty of consternation and wavering back and forth, to set up a PayPal account for those of you who wish to make a one-time donation, as well as a Patreon page for those of you who wish to make donations monthly. I do, however, need to lay out 2 ground rules first. So before you donate, please take a moment to hear me out so that I can explain these ground rules and why I felt the need to implement them. First, donations will confer upon you no special privileges whatsoever. That is, many Patreon pages will offer, say, exclusive videos or early access to videos for anyone who pledges more than $3 a month, or the opportunity to chat with someone over email for more than $50 a month. And while I'm not criticizing creators who take this approach, that is how Patreon is designed to work after all, incentives of this sort are designed to separate you from your money. And that's not at all what I'm looking to do here. In fact, the reason it's taken me so long to do this is that I know that there are many of you out there who don't have much money, but I also know that many of you are very kind and generous people, that you appreciate the work I do, and that many of you will be tempted to donate money even if you don't have any of your own to spare. So let me be clear. I do not want your money unless you absolutely, positively can manage the additional expense without bringing any hardship upon yourself or those around you. In other words, if you still have disposable income to spare after taking care of yourself and your loved ones, then you are welcome to donate. If, on the other hand, you would have to rely on credit in order to manage the additional expense, then please do not donate. This is why donating confers upon you no special privileges, because I do not want to give you any reason to bring hardship upon yourself on my account. So that's the primary reason. But I also don't want to create a tiered community on this channel, whereby those who donate are given special treatment. It's hard enough to choose comments to read in Let's Talk Lore as it is, and I think that the purity of this space would be severely compromised if, say, I agreed to read the comments of those who donate over a certain amount per month. There's also the fact that I don't really have the time to manage a convoluted system of reward tiers, but that's secondary to the reasons we just discussed. Taken together though, it's for all these reasons that our first ground rule is that donations will confer upon you no special privileges whatsoever. Second, donations will have no direct impact on either the quality of my videos or the frequency with which I release videos. In other words, for reasons I will explain at the end of this video, I will be using these donations principally to help pay my bills, and not to upgrade equipment or anything like that. So if you decide to donate, know that doing so will not necessarily increase the quality or the frequency of my videos. Similarly, I still have a dissertation to finish, and that will remain my top priority until it is complete, regardless of how much I receive in donations. In other words, donating money will not have a direct impact on the frequency with which I release videos. It could, of course, have an indirect impact, in that there are times when I might be able to record, but I am otherwise too stressed out or feeling too anxious about my financial situation to do so. So I will concede the possibility that, with some more financial security, I might find myself recording more often, but please do not donate with this expectation in mind. In short, I want you all to understand that you are not directly donating to Aegon of Astora, but rather that you are donating to help ease some of the pressure that Callum is currently feeling as a result of certain factors that are largely out of my control. So in summary, before you donate, please understand that first, donations will confer upon you no special privileges whatsoever, and that second, donations will have no direct impact on either the quality of my videos or the frequency with which I release videos. I know that some of you will disagree with my decision to subject all donations to these ground rules, but after having spent many months thinking about this, I concluded that this is the only way that I can do this without violating my own personal moral or ethical code, or fracturing and compromising the wonderful community that we've built here on this channel together. So why am I doing this now? As I noted at the outset of this video, there are 2 primary reasons why I've decided to open myself up to donations. First, a growing number of you have been asking for this in the last year or so. During that time, I've expressed an openness to the idea, but always maintained that if I was going to be accepting donations, that it needed to be done right. Prior to that, I always maintained that donations were not necessary and that I had everything I needed financially. So what changed? To answer this question, I'm going to need to divulge some personal information that I've hitherto not really discussed on this channel. After all, if you're going to be donating money to the person behind this channel, it's only fair that you know a little bit more about my situation and how I managed to find myself in my current financial predicament to begin with. So I would ask that you bear with me for the remainder of this video, as I'm about to attempt to explain just that. So, what changed? For starters, I have now been on strike for over 3 months, along with the other teaching assistants, part-time faculty, and graduate assistants at York University, who together make up the local 3903 branch of the Canadian Union of Public Employees, or CUPE 3903 for short. Collectively, CUPE 3903 does 60% of the teaching at York University, one of the largest public research-based universities in Canada, but also an institution that has become increasingly corporatized in recent years. For example, more than half of the voting members of York University's Board of Governors are corporate executives or directors who have no experience as educators, and seemingly little regard for the educational pursuits of those who have no designs on becoming another cog in the corporate Canada machine. In more precise terms, corporate executives and directors control 55.6% of the votes on York's Board of Governors, the highest percentage in the province of Ontario according to Press Progress, and a grossly disproportionate share of the vote when compared to the number of students actually enrolled in business programs at York. As it is presently constituted, the Board of Governors does not reflect the diversity of the student body, and it lacks an understanding and appreciation of the specificity of the post-secondary educational context in which York operates. York is not a privately owned, for-profit corporation. It is a public university, and it should be governed as such. I should note that while this is important context for understanding the strike which has left me in a rather undesirable financial situation, I am not suggesting that the specific individuals who together constitute the present board are entirely to blame for the present situation. Instead, the makeup of the board reflects broader trends in society towards the greater corporatization of education and the devaluing of any form of education which has the potential to produce university graduates capable of engaging in meaningful, critical thought, and who thereby represent a threat to the present order of things, which overwhelmingly favors the whims of economic and political elites at the expense of everyone else. Similarly, York's executive leadership, situated in Kneff Tower, has also changed in recent years in a manner which reflects broader societal trends. Executive compensation at York has, much like that which has been observed in the broader political economy, swelled considerably in recent years, while frontline academic and administrative workers have only seen modest gains by comparison. This additional money has, of course, come largely from the recent drive to both increase class sizes as well as from the offloading of a greater share of the teaching responsibilities onto precariously employed and part-time employees, like myself, who earn considerably less than their tenured, full-time colleagues. Now, if you have spent any amount of time on this channel, you know very well that meaningful, engaged, and critical education is not only very important to me, it pervades every fabric of my being. It is for this reason that, in spite of the fact that I am only paid for the number of hours listed on my contract, I have always worked far in excess of that figure, in order so that I might provide for my students the best, most meaningful education I can possibly manage. If I only worked the hours for which I am paid, on the other hand, my classes would hardly be worth attending. This exemplifies something that CUPE 3903 has been emphasizing from the outset of this labor dispute. Our working conditions and the learning conditions of our students are one and the same. Put more simply, I am only able to provide a meaningful educational experience for my students in spite of the terms of my labor contract, and not because of these terms. So you might imagine my dismay at hearing reports that apparently I make $55 an hour, when if you account for the number of hours I actually work, I earn something like $30 an hour, which might still sound decent, but it's a far cry from what York is claiming I make, and it obscures the fact that I'm not permitted to earn more than $21,000 annually. This is also a far cry from what someone with my qualifications might otherwise be earning in the private sector. Graduate students are also students and employees, who are paid for their work as TAs, but must also pay tuition and maintain continuous enrollment, even when they are no longer taking courses, and are thereby in a uniquely vulnerable position, which is simply not comparable to the issues which face employees in other sectors. What's more is that educational institutions as large and complex as York University are subject to unique challenges which demand solutions devised with a similarly high degree of specificity. The issues most important to academic workers in a given institutional context are likewise the product of factors like geographic situatedness, the demographic makeup of its student body, and so on. And yet, when QP 3903 exercised its legal right to reject an unacceptably concession-laden deal which not only placed our already meager funding in jeopardy and did nothing to address the increasingly precarious conditions to which part-time faculty are subjected, but also threatened to completely decimate one of our 3 bargaining units, York University had the audacity to engage in a relentlessly misleading PR campaign, which maligned us for having rejected a so-called sector-leading offer and painted us as entitled, money-grubbing crybabies. We rejected that deal on the 2nd of March and went on strike March 5th. Our collective agreement had expired in August of 2017, and York, through a legal representative infamous for busting unions, stonewalled our bargaining team at every step along the way. It has since become clear that they never had any intent of bargaining with us in good faith, and that their plan all along was to force our hand with a deal they knew we couldn't accept, and then to simply wait for us, as employees of a public institution, to be legislated back to work. York not only violated our right to bargain collectively, which in Canada is protected under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, they were also acting on their knowledge that arbitration in cases such as this one almost always favors the employer. In the meantime, they have refused to cancel classes, and in so doing, they established the conditions for violent confrontations on the picket line, seemingly in hopes that this might turn the tide of public sentiment against us. I feel guilty every single day, knowing that my friends and colleagues on the picket line are being subjected to such hostile conditions on a daily basis. But as I have discussed elsewhere, I have been in graduate school for far too long at this point, and the longer I take to wrap up my studies, the more my mental health becomes a concern. Accordingly, I opted not to picket in order so that I might focus on completing my dissertation. While I have made good progress on this front, I have also not been paid in over 3 months, and while I have the enormously good fortune of having several loved ones who are willing to assist me financially, these are also people who are not wealthy by any means, and I am concerned that they might be stretching themselves too thin in order to help me. What's more is that rent charges are piling up in my student account with each passing month, as I am currently earning no income with which to pay for my on-campus apartment. So in several different respects, I'm stuck. I need to finish my dissertation in order to complete my PhD, and I need to maintain continuous registration in order to do that. But I can't register for as long as there are charges outstanding on my account, and I can't pay down these charges until I have the money to do so. But I haven't been paid in over 3 months because we're on strike, and the university refuses to negotiate with us. And even though I've already worked far in excess of the number of hours listed on my contract, I won't be paid the amount still owed to me when the strike ends because the outstanding semester, which should have ended in April, will need to be shortened considerably. Adding to all this is the fact that I've already accumulated more than $20,000 in student loans, so there's virtually no conceivable way for me to pay down my student account on my own. The strike will, of course, come to an end eventually, and I will, one way or another, manage to pay down my student account, finish my dissertation, and graduate. It will be difficult, to be sure, but I've always managed to endure in the past, and I don't imagine that this time will be any different. I know that many of you have been through similar struggles, and that some of you are currently mired in situations far more dire than that which I've just described. I hope you know that your viewership is more than enough, and that I don't expect a dime from any of you, especially if you are, like myself, precariously employed and on equally precarious financial footing. If you do have money to spare, however, and you'd like to help me through this difficult time, I would appreciate that more than you could probably ever know. These last few months have been exceptionally difficult for a variety of reasons, but this is among the most difficult things I've had to do during this period. That is, to not only concede that my finances have become a problem, but also to ask for help. And in so doing, to risk violating the sacred space that is my YouTube channel, and the community that we've built here together over the last 3 years. I hope you know that this is not a decision I took lightly, and that I've done everything I can to safeguard this space against precisely the kinds of issues I've dedicated my life to confronting. That is also to say that I teach, research, and live my life according to a praxis of critical pedagogy. So even though I often speak of myself, and Aegon of Astora, as constituting separate identities, the person speaking to you now is the same person who gets excited whenever it's time for fun with definitions. I bristle with a similar excitement whenever I get the sense that one of my students, who most often refer to me by my middle initials, CJ, has come to a richer understanding of how the world works, thanks in part to my provocations. Similarly, when I spent the latter half of this past summer in British Columbia learning about sockeye salmon from First Nations elders, I not only felt honored to have had the opportunity to learn from the wisdom they so kindly shared with me, I also felt the weight of the responsibility associated with bearing that knowledge. But this also reaffirmed my decision to live my life according to the values which inform my work as a researcher and as a teacher. All of this is to say that I am driven in my life principally by two passions: to learn and to teach. And as I see it, it is my responsibility to continue to learn about the world, its structural composition, and the inequities which arise from that structure, and to continue to teach others about the same so that together we might bring about meaningful, long-term change. I would like to live in a world where we are measured not by how much we accumulate, but by how well we take care of each other. And after I graduate, I will be pursuing a career consistent with this vision. This is also to say that unfortunately, I will likely continue to be precariously employed for some time. A few days ago at the time of writing, the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario was elected with a majority mandate, under the leadership of Doug Ford, a man who unironically claims to stand for the interests of the common person, but whose policies will, in reality, serve to benefit political economic elites at the expense of those very same common people. Under a premier like Doug Ford, a man born with a silver label in his mouth, who, not unlike Donald Trump, rails against political elites despite being one himself, the issues I described at the outset of this segment will become more and more pronounced. Deep cuts to Ontario's education system are certain to follow, for instance, which means that many educators like myself will continue to be precariously employed for many years to come. So even though this strike will soon end, and I will eventually dig myself out of this financial hole within which I am currently mired, your ongoing support beyond my current predicament will help me to continue learning and teaching, whether in the field, in the classroom, or on YouTube, against the grain of the status quo. With all that said, I want to reiterate one more time that your dedicated viewership, kind comments, and mere presence is more than enough support. You've all helped me through some of the toughest periods in my life, and whether you donate or not, that is something that I will never forget. So thank you, sincerely.